Me, that's a lot of lunacy, Jesus Christ.
Warning, I swear a lot.
Hello friends, and welcome back to Limbus Company. Welcome to the Canto 5 tier list. It's been a long time coming. There's a lot to talk about, I'm sure. We've also got some extractions to do. We were going to do the Refraction Railway Line 3 today, but now we're not. So, hard dungeon, I suppose, and hopefully next time it's not even going to be available. I don't know, next time we'll do some of the minis, and then when the railway is available again, we'll go back to the railway. We'll figure it out, it'll be fine, there'll be stuff to do, don't worry, it's all good. But enough of that for now. To the tier lists, let's make this happen. Yes, that was plural. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Canto 5 tier list. So, yes, there is a lot to discuss on this occasion. Not about most of these characters, to be honest, because yes, everyone did have things to say and things to do in this Canto. Let's be real, a lot of the focus is going to be on Ishmael, because it was her Canto, and she was the most significant character in said Canto. Everyone else played their parts, everyone else chipped in, but this is mostly going to be about her. But there might be a couple people who swap around positions and stuff, I don't know, we'll see. But I've also made notes. I've written down notes. I told you guys I was making note of characters' notable moments in the story, but I've also made notes about what I want to say in regards to Ishmael and Canto 5, so that I can provide a more clear and concise explanation rather than sitting here going, hair's too long, and it's stupid and annoying. So, that will be done properly. The rest of them, I'm still gonna fly by the seat of my pants because that's just what I do. But let's get started, shall we? Gregor is in S tier, no one's surprised. Obviously, I was going to do that. Come on, it's Gregor. I love him. I almost feel like there's not much point talking about him at this point. And indeed, he didn't do a lot of value in Canto 5, to be completely honest with you. He wasn't up to much, but I don't know, I just really like Gregor. Like, that's it. He's just probably my favorite character. I really like him. So he's always going to be in S tier because I love him, and that's kind of the end of the story. And I'm going to put Otis back up to S tier as well because, frankly, if my favorite character wasn't Gregor, it would be Otis. Because those two are my main ones. They are my favorites. Otis taking up the role of captain was hilarious. She also approached the situation with Ishmael in an interesting way. I wouldn't necessarily say I condone her being like, we need to fucking fire Ishmael immediately, and like, if you're planning to resign, that's in breach of your contract, and you stab the manager, you're going to fucking die. But it does make sense, at the very least, you know, that she is that kind of person. She is very dedicated to what she believes to be the chain of command. Like, whether or not she likes Dante as much as she claims is definitely up in the air, but she definitely respects the chain of command. Mostly because it lets her know who she needs to chat up in order to remain high on the fucking food chain. But yeah, her reactions to Ishmael's behavior I found was interesting because it did show that a lot of her behavior is genuine, because she gets genuinely angry, and you kind of look at that and go, alright, that's not all bootlicking per se. It's because she is a soldier and she believes in the chain of command, truly. But as well as that, I think if I remember correctly, her and Dante have a brief conversation where Otis is like, being in charge is hard, dude. Like, it's really tough. I get it. Like, you know, it's not easy. And once again, I feel like that conveys that whether or not she actually truly likes Dante as much as she claims is very much up in the air. But she does respect the fact that Dante is the manager and does everything she can to support the manager. Regardless whom that may be, to be completely honest, that is the key point. She will respect who is in charge. It doesn't matter who's in charge. I'm curious to see how that will change when her Canto rolls around, but that's then, this is now. Overall, though, I like her very much. She's very dynamic. She's very forward. She says a lot of things. She can be downright hilarious a lot of the time. Very good character. I like her a lot. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move Honglu up to A to, because I really like him. I really do. He's so endearing. He's so fun. I like the stupid noise he makes every time someone says something or he sees something. He's like, whoa, just a great guy. Just an absolute golden retriever of a man. He's fantastic. Like, a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time I think I rate these characters kind of on if I'd like to hang out with them. I would absolutely love to hang out with Gregor because he's just friendly. He's just a friendly guy. He's just generally pleasant. Maybe a bit reserved, but you could have a drink with him and you just have a nice chat and it'd be a good time. Otis, you could totally get along with, you just need to watch yourself a little bit, but that is where a lot of the comedy comes from. And I would absolutely hang out with Hong Le, because that would be so pleasant. Having a nice cup of tea with Hong Le would be amazing. That would be such a nice experience. It'd be one of the most relaxing things you've ever done in your life, right? 100%. I don't know how else to really convey why I like Hong Le so much, but I think you all get it. You're all kind of in the same, not all of you, everyone has different tastes, but you're all kind of in the same place where you're like, yeah, nah, Hong Le's a treasure. That feels fairly universal among the fan base, that he's just a delight. It's just how he is. He's just very nice, very friendly, very funny to watch. I remember he accidentally roasted Heathcliff something fierce. It was either in the Intervallo or early in the Canto, I can't remember which, but I don't think I even wrote down what he specifically said either, which is annoying. Yeah, I just delivered an absolute zinger to Heathcliff unintentionally, but it was very funny and I remember that. But it's not even necessarily that he delivered that zinger, it's just that it's his general attitude. He means nothing by it. Absolutely nothing by it. Now, there's many theories as to whether or not he's more aware and more intelligent than he lets on, and yeah, I think that's probably the case. I imagine a lot of his demeanor is a coping mechanism, but a lot of it feels genuine as well. Merceau, you're going A tier. I really like you, man. I really do. He's just very fucking funny. He had a great apron when he was cooking crabs. That was great. I remember that. I think that's the only note I've got for him. The idea that he used to go clubbing is fucking hilarious to me, and I absolutely love it. And I'd say, once again, Merceau's biggest fault is that he's not in enough scenes. If he was in more scenes, he might be in S tier. But I also wonder if Merceau is in more scenes, would he be less effective? Using him sparingly might honestly be the best thing to do, right? Because he just pops up. And sometimes he just says something completely dry, because that's what he is. He's just like, I see this over here, that's over there, I think we should do this, okay. And then sometimes he comes out with something fucking hilarious, and maybe that is because the reason it's so funny is because A, his lines are used very sparingly, and B, sometimes it's very dry, but he's very likable. I'd hang out with Merceau because it would be a comfortable silence. He's not interested in making small talk, that's fine. I don't have to make small talk either, we'll just sit there and chill. I think that could be enjoyable, personally. But I like him a lot. He's very good. I feel like there's going to be a lot. I'm worried, actually, that there's going to be a lot of A tiers here. I'm going to... This might be controversial, but bear with me. I'm going to put Don Quixote in B tier. She's gone down to B... Well, actually, she was in B tier last time. She's in B tier this time. My opinion of Don Quixote has never gone down. I like her just as much as I did when she started. The problem is that she has remained exactly where she started because we're not really learning anything more about her. We're getting to see her be silly, and she provides much comedic value to many scenes. Like, she's great, she's fantastic, and she's one of my best sinners in terms of combat because I have so many good identities with her. But she's staying exactly where she is, and we are learning as much about her as we did to begin with, really, whereas the rest of the sinners are divulging more about themselves. They're showing off more of their personalities, they're getting more lines in, they're progressing, whereas Don Quixote feels a little stagnant. Not enough that I would start marking her down any further than B, right? That is like the bare minimum of my appreciation of her quality, is at least B. She is above average, even though here it would be average, but she's a high B, I like her a lot, but she's not progressing, she's not evolving, we're not learning anything new. It's hard to have her up there with, like, my favorites when she's just the same as she's always been. Granted, Gregor, for instance, hasn't really grown much over time, but we do learn more about his moral compass, like how in Canto 4, he gets really fucking angry when he learns that, K-Corp do capital punishment or field executions, whatever you want to call it. He gets really angry about that, and he expresses that, and that's something else we learn about his moral center, because it's easy to forget that some of these sinners do actually have a proper moral center. We like to think a lot of them as being generally quite heartless, but Gregor's not. Like, it's easy to think even that Heathcliff is heartless, and then you learn that, like, oh no, actually the dude's got quite a lot of empathy. Like, if Don Quixote hadn't attacked the checkpoint in Canto 3, he probably would have. So, but Don Quixote has done nothing that you wouldn't expect her to do, that you wouldn't already know that she would do and expect her to do, you know what I mean? For a character who is portrayed as being so unpredictable, she's quite predictable, actually. I can kind of tell what she's going to do when she does it. But her love of volleyball was very endearing, and the fact how sad she got when the ball was destroyed was very sad. Yeah. It's definitely not me saying I dislike Don Quixote, it's just that she's not really doing anything new. I like her as much as when we started, but other sinners I like more than when we started, and they're evolving, and I think that's worth noting. Rogia is B tier. Much like Don Quixote, actually, she doesn't really grow much. In fact, she didn't even grow from her own Canto. Far from the funniest or most impactful member of the group, but she always has something good to contribute. It's always enjoyable to see Rogia on screen. She's always fun or funny, or just generally uplifting, or if she's like worried about something, that's when you know it's a pretty bad situation, because she's usually very laid back, and she's fairly confident as well. So in scenes where she's not upbeat and bubbly and fun and confident, is a time for concern, basically. And she's very consistent, I think. I like Rogia a lot. She's definitely someone I'd hang out with in real life. I know people like her, in fact. Don Quixote, maybe not. It would have to depend on the context, really, because she's a bit too loud. And I'm old now. I don't like it when people are too loud. I like some loud, you know, but not too much loud. And she's nothing if not loud and hyperactive. But I still like her very much. Rogia, absolutely could hang out with. Not a problem with that. Sinclair remains in C. He remains a high C, frankly, because he is a good character, but he's just not up to much, really, in the grand scheme of things. He has some scenes. He does good. He's not bad. No character on here is bad, but he's not the most interesting or exciting or funny or enjoyable or knowledgeable character in the tier list. Or even on the roster, sorry. He's pretty mid. Overall, he's pretty mid. He had his moment in Canto 3, it's passed. That was kind of it. Now, I'm hoping that will change in the future, but I can't place him above any of these people. I just can't. It wouldn't feel right. Absolutely wouldn't. But I like Sinclair, you know I do. I wish I could place him higher, but I can't. Yi Sang-mei, honestly. I'm gonna be reasonable here, because I want to put him in A, but I don't think that's fair. I'm gonna put him in B. He's doing very well though. Yi Sang now wanting to be friends with everyone and being all happy and nice and being like, oh, we're all friends. I just want to hang out with my friends. It's delightful. He's fantastic. He still feels like Yi Sang as well. But it feels like Yi Sang coming out of his shell. It feels like Yi Sang being comfortable with the people around him. There's a hair on the camera. That's what happens when you have 13 dogs. Yi Sang coming out of his shell is fantastic. He loves the volleyed balls, that's brilliant. He desperately tried to mend the rift between Ishmael and Heathcliff and Dante, and that was very commendable and endearing as well, that he would try to do that. And I mean, all of the positives that Yi Sang had before are still there, in that he's interesting and mysterious and funny and goth as fuck. But he's also really nice now and likes his friends. It's just very heartwarming. I don't know. Not sure I can put him up to A yet. Maybe if some stuff happens in Canto 6, but I can't justify it right now. Him being seasick was very fucking funny though. Of course he's seasick. Who else would be? It would either have been him or Sinclair, who have the exact same hair but mirrored, but I've talked about that before. Ryoshu remains in C. It's just a shame. I'd really like to bump her up a rank, I think, but she's just not quite there yet. Calling Ricardo a bitch brother was fucking hilarious, and the fact that she was parrying harpoons they were firing at the Lobcourt facility with her sheath is fucking dope, by the way. It is. It just is. There's no two ways about it. That's fucking rad. But yeah, she just doesn't quite contribute enough. Or at least not enough of real tangible value. I hope that changes. I know I'm saying I hope that changes a lot, but it's so annoying and hard doing this tier list because I want to put everyone in A or S, really. That's all I want the tiers to be, but that's not a very interesting tier list. I want her to be higher, but I just don't feel like she's earned it yet. I just don't. She hasn't earned it yet. She probably will. I'd be very shocked if by the end of Limbus Company's life cycle, Ryoshi was still in C. I'd be very surprised because she has the potential. I think her Canto will make a big difference. I think it'll make a huge difference. But she's not quite there yet. Faust remains in Faust tier. I don't really have a lot to say about it at this point. She had a couple good moments in this Canto when she, in the intervals when she tortured fucking Heathcliff with an in-depth explanation of like words and get and shit. Very funny. It showed she has potential to be like a genuinely funny and center of attention kind of character in any scene without it being forced or annoying. But she's not there yet. She can though. And that's exciting. I like that we might be able to get Faust somewhere higher up on this tier list. I would like that very much, but she definitely hasn't earned it yet. No way. Not by this. Not so far. Definitely not. Heathcliff remains an S, frankly, because he is that fucking funny and interesting. He was very reserved throughout this Canto, I noticed. Like, his little spat with Ishmael definitely affected him, like, in a rather major way. He was almost brooding as much as Ishmael was, in fact, I found. He would kind of like cheer up a bit, but then his mood would drop back down again. And that was interesting. And then having him be the one who pulls Ishmael out of the pallid shit at the end was a very nice touch. Very much appreciated. Despite the fact they bumped heads more than any other sinners in the roster, it feels like him and Ishmael understand each other the most, perhaps. Perhaps even more than Dante understands either of them. Seems like they have some kind of mutual understanding. I don't know, it's weird, but I liked that dynamic. And I mean, Ishmael's mood was affecting Heathcliff as well, so it led to a situation where it felt like Heathcliff was just going to pop off at any moment, specifically at her. Every time she said something, I was like, is Heathcliff going to pop off? Like, is he going to kick off about this? Because he might. I like the guy, but I'm not going to pretend he isn't belligerent and prone to temper tantrums, because he abso-fucking-lutely is. The thing is, though, is that he's a likable character. A very likable character. And you can forgive a character for a lot of things if they're likable. Some of y'all out there really like characters who are basically serial killers, but you let them off for it because they're likable characters. It's just the case with media. Or fictional characters, more to the point. Dante, S tier, because I love Dante. Even when Dante was annoying me with their inaction and their passiveness in regards to Ishmael's situation, still love Dante. But frankly, Dante has made massive strides throughout this Canto. Huge strides, big progress, serious big progress. Makes the other Cantos look like they weren't doing nothing at all. Taking that harpoon was a big move, a major plus, a big play, the biggest play. An absolute Chad Baller play. Brilliant idea. Won Heathcliff over straight away, which is kind of impressive. But mainly Dante biding their time, basically, in regards to talking to Ishmael, realizing that most of the time traveling between Marlin Bay to the Lobcourt facility, and then from the Lobcourt facility to the Whale, Dante realized that, I'm not going to get through to Ishmael right now. There's nothing I can say that is going to improve this situation. None. I can't think of anything that would work, so I'm not going to. And I was like, that's better. Because it's better than before, because Dante was actively analyzing the situation and thinking about what they could do about it. What would annoy me about Dante before is that it seemed like they were just standing there and waiting for the situation to go away. Whenever there was a problem in the team, they would just stand there and hope that it would resolve itself. It is from around Canto 4 onwards that Dante started to be like, right, I think I need to actually watch this and try and figure out how to fix it. The intervals before Canto 5, the magic hell bus and the junk crabs, definitely felt like Dante was kind of trying to just let the situation blow over. They made some meager attempts, but then immediately backed off when they noticed failure. And when things started kicking off between Heathcliff and Ishmael, they stood way the fuck back and wanted nothing to do with it. I get it, because it's scary. These people are scary. They are all essentially murderers, violent murderers, and Dante doesn't have a lot of life experience because they can't remember it directly. So yeah, I can understand them struggling with it. But seeing them make some solid progress was very satisfying, probably because of their inactivity earlier on, so I was glad to see that. But we get to the moment that you've all been waiting for, the crux of this tier list placement right now. Where does Ishmael go? Well, based on my expressed opinions of her, I imagine you guys are expecting her to go in one of two places, which would be understandable. And indeed, she remains in C tier, but there are a lot of caveats to this placement, and if I was just being a dick, I would have put her in Faust tier. I was really tempted to do that just for laughs, but no, if I was just like, fuck Ishmael, I don't like her, she's stupid, I would have put her in Faust tier, or I'd have been even more spiteful and I would have made an Ishmael tier, an Ish tier, and put it below Faust just to be a dick. But no, there are reasons for this. I have a lot to talk about. This might be the longest one. So, I am actively referring to my notes right now, so some of this is pre-written, okay? Not that it matters, in fact it might make it better, but just so you know. For a start, the reason she's in C tier right now is the exact same reason why Yi Sang was in C tier after Canto 4, and that's because, yes, we've had the moment where they faced their problems, and they triumphed, and they did it really well, and it was great, it was fantastic scenes and moments, but it was just a moment. They haven't had an opportunity to show us what they're like yet. You know, we got a little bit of it from Ishmael after we left Ahab to rot on the well, and she expressed a much more brighter, determined, self-confident, strong personality, or attitude, I suppose actually might be the correct term, and that was good. That was very good. That gives me a lot of hope. It gives me a lot of hope for her future. That was fantastic. But, A, in the interest of fairness, and B, because I honestly believe it makes sense, if I've got a character in C tier and I haven't been sure about them or think they're kind of mid in terms of their overall quality in regards to comedy and moving scenes along and stuff for the entirety of the fucking game, and then they have a really good scene at the end of their canto, I don't think that's enough to move them up a tier yet. They need to earn it. Yi Sang has earned it. Ishmael could earn it, absolutely. She's not written off. She's not a write-off. She could move out of C tier, abso-fucking-lutely. 100%. But even though I am saying that, like, look, the actions at the end of a canto aren't enough to move someone out of the tier until they prove themselves, I will say she handled Ahab perfectly. I literally cannot think of any way she could have done that better. I actually can't. In fact, what I suggested was that she kill Ahab and then kill the whale. I suggested an inferior option. She went even better. She went for disrespect. She went for kill stealing. She went for the utter removal of the meaning of Ahab's life, which is absolutely A+, S tier, P rank, the best, absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. But an argument I've seen a lot in her favor, and people got quite angry about this sometimes, was that I was not acknowledging or respecting, or maybe in some people's words, understanding the fact that Ishmael has a lot of trauma, which has led to a lot of her behavior and attitude prior to Canto 5 and also when Canto 5 started. And I do acknowledge that Ishmael's been through a lot, okay? She's been through a fucking lot. But do you know who else has been through a lot? Every other sinner on this roster. Every single one. Now, it's difficult to compare traumas because that's just not really a thing you do either in fiction or in real life, so it's a bit difficult. But for example, let me use one I'm definitely not biased about, but Gregor, right? I've written this down. Gregor was altered against his will as a young person. He had his arm replaced with a bug arm, which is not pleasant. Like, it just isn't. He's also a war veteran, actively fought on the losing side of the smoke war, watched his comrades, friends, co-workers die by masses. He most likely, it hasn't really been established, so we can't use this as like a definitive fucking description of his personality or his character. He probably has PTSD. Probably. My basis for that, which I should once again point out this is not a fact, it's just my interpretation of the character, is when we find out that when in Canto 1, when we go back to the smoke war and Gregor realizes he's in the smoke war, his reaction is the most heartbreaking, most real thing I've ever heard, because he barely forms a fucking word. It's just disbelief and I'd almost describe it as whimpering. Because he's literally been dragged back into his nightmare. This isn't something that, like, at least before he realizes it is the Golden Bow projecting shit, but even then it's still pretty bad. But from his perspective in that moment, he has not just been reminded of his nightmare, he's not just been reminded of the misery and trauma of his past, he is being actively dragged back into it. It is a rough fucking moment for him. He also learns later on that Herman, the literal architect of his torment and misery in his life, is not only still alive, is not only still active, but is actively working against the faction he is working for and is actively aware of his existence. He said, I cannot escape her, and he's correct, he hasn't. He still hasn't, she's still there. That's terrifying. On top of that, what about Rhodia? Right? Rhodia was directly responsible for and had to bear witness to the massacre of her community. And they didn't just line them up and shoot them, which would be awful, incidentally, but at least would be, and I'm using big quotation marks here, humane. No, they stuck them on fucking pikes and shit and burned them in the streets. It was a gang massacre, and she had to witness that, and she also had to deal with the fact that it was basically her fault, even though she was trying to do the right thing. On top of that as well, Sinclair witnesses the murder of and is partially responsible for the murder of his family. He was a child in school, and he watched his family get eviscerated, get absolutely brutalized. Now, granted, he didn't watch the murder happen per se, but he saw the aftermath. I think he witnessed the final moments of was it his dad, I think? Don't they like crush his fucking head as his dad tells Sinclair to run or something? But he witnessed the murder of his family as a kid. And it's worth pointing out that these three characters, Gregor, Rhodia, and Sinclair, are possibly the three most friendliest sinners on the team. They are the friendliest. They, honestly, all three of them fight hard, work hard. They do their best. Like, even when the situation looks bad, they give it a go. Sinclair was understandably terrified at having to face the idea of having to face N-Corp and Chroma again. And yeah, he kind of had to be forced into it. But he did it. He did do it. Gregor barely said a word upon realizing that he was, you know, massacring his way through his former colleagues. And to be honest, Rhodia's lack of any real reaction to the situation surrounding her Canto is actually more of an indictment against her Canto, but it's fine. But my point is, look, I'm not saying Ishmael can't be... I'm not saying everyone has to be as happy and peppy as those characters, and I'm not saying that Ishmael was not justified in being sullen, distant, quiet, and rather hostile to the rest of the sinners, but the issue I found was that Ishmael didn't seem like she was even trying to work with the people around her. Now, let me emphasize that, seemed like she wasn't trying. Whether or not she was trying is not actually the point there, as such. Her attitude was awful. It was just awful. It was just so unpleasant to be around. When I said before that it seemed like she shut down the humor in most scenes, that wasn't a throwaway statement. I meant it. The other sinners would be having banter, and then she'd come in and throw out a sharp jab, and all conversation would just cease. And I'm like, yeah, it's written that way, but it just feels like she's ruined another scene. And it would happen so many times, and then it got even worse in the intervallo leading up to Canto 5, obviously, because that was the point. And it got even worse. Like, actually, no, I'd say the intervallo was the worst moments of like, that was her worst moments. It got a little bit better as Canto 5 went on, but I struggled with the character because I was like, I know, but I know you've had a rough time of it, but everyone else has too. And I should point out, and this is something applicable to real life as well, trauma is not an excuse to be an asshole. It's not. I have trauma, and it's not an excuse to be an asshole. I know, because I used to be an asshole. Some of you might think I still am, and if you do, fair enough. I apologize, I guess, for giving you that impression, but it's not an excuse. It isn't. It's just not. Most people actually have some form of trauma. And indeed, most of the characters on this list have some form of trauma, and they held it together significantly better than Ishmael did. They just did. I'm sorry, I know you don't want to fucking hear that, but it's true. It is true. However, lest it seem like I'm only using this to rag on Ishmael, I will point out that unlike Gregor, Rhodia, and Sinclair, she has actually resolved the issues plaguing her. Not resolved is a strong word. She has faced the issues that were plaguing her. She has met them head on, as it were, and she has, to an extent, not entirely, but to an extent, she has resolved those issues. She's faced them head on, she's beat them, she's at the very least come to terms with them. I don't think Gregor has. You know, I just don't think his issues are quite resolved yet. Rhodia didn't do shit. Rhodia's done fuck all in regards to resolving her issues. And Sinclair killed... He didn't even kill Chroma, but Chroma's dead, which I guess... kinda. And yeah, some of the conversations between him and Dante did feel like it kind of worked Sinclair towards a better mindset, but I think Sinclair still holds a lot of guilt and a lot of mixed feelings about his past. Whereas I would argue that Yi Sang and Ishmael have actually faced their problems, their trauma, their past head on and beaten them. They'll still affect them for sure. I don't think Ishmael's going to immediately be over Queequeg, for example. That would be absurd. But at least she's faced it. This is why I'm so hopeful for Ishmael, because of everything I just said about her before, about how much she used to piss me off, about how irritating and frustrating and how much of a downer she was in every single conversation with her in the game. She's now faced up to her problems and beaten them. Yeah, her personality is not going to do a 180 and she's just suddenly going to be bubbly and friendly and bright, but that's not what we're looking for anyway. My hope is that she will, from this point onwards, just be a little bit less defeatist. That is the point, I guess, is that she's found a meaning to her life and that will bring her forward. I'm really not trying to compare them, but she's not unique in the fact that she's had a difficult life, especially in this setting. I would conclude my points on Ishmael specifically by saying that I'm hesitant to say that I like her now because for the exact same reasons why she's still in C tier. We need to see more of her before we can really go forward with that. But I will say I've gained a fuck ton of respect for her because the way she handled everything in Canto 5 was respectable. It was a pretty rough start, pretty questionable start, but she brought it back and she brought it together and she made it through and she ended that Canto with aplomb, with absolute style points, top marks, 10 out of 10. She did amazing. She did fantastically. I really, 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 really hope that my opinion of her improves. And if Yi Sang is anything to go by, it's distinctly possible. But there we go. That was the Canto Sinner tier list. Canto 5 Sinner tier list. Yes. Are we done? No. Funny enough, we're not. Welcome to the Canto tier list, an actual tier list of the Cantos. Yeah, we're doing this as well. I've blown a lot of time doing this. I'm like, yeah, it's been 40 minutes. This is going to be a very talky episode. In fact, I might actually not do the hard mirror dungeon today because this might be quite long. I don't know, we'll see. Naturally, at the end of the finale of Canto 5, I kind of put the Cantos in order of ranking, right? I ranked them. But it's worth pointing out that at the end of that video, I was tired. I had a lot to process about Canto 5. Having just beat it, there was a lot to think about. I kind of rushed my thoughts on the other Cantos. I didn't really go through them in my mind. Like, I didn't really think about them. It was all rushed. Should have taken more time to actually think about it. And now we have, hence this tier list. Now we're going to actually do this properly. Rank them properly. Only one can be best. Only one can be top tier. Obviously, you'll notice that the ratings are best, greater, great, and good. And that's because I like all of them. There's no shit Canto, in my opinion. There just isn't. Not yet. I highly doubt the 6th will be, and honestly, I just don't think there ever will be a shit Canto. I have confidence in Project Moon, and I think they're all going to be, at the very least, good. Right? But yeah, I didn't want to put like this one's. I didn't want to put an inflammatory ranking which was garbage because none of them are garbage. Even the worst one is not garbage, okay? It just isn't. Finally, the tiers are entirely feeling and opinion based and are not an impartial judge of quality, and you should apply that to the Sinner tier list as well. They are not, this is not a definitive, like, professional review of which one's best and which one's worse. It is purely based on my feelings and opinions while playing them. So, if this tier list does not reflect your own opinions, that's cool. Feel free to post yours in the comments, but these are mine. So let's start with Canto 1, shall we? This one's pretty obvious, I gotta be honest. Good. Canto 1 is the worst Canto. I don't think that's gonna come as any surprise to anyone, and I don't think it's unfair to say, but I also feel it worth pointing out that it is a brilliant introduction to Limbus Company, because bearing in mind, Canto 1 is the Canto that basically decides whether or not you're gonna keep playing. If you manage to beat Canto 1, you've beaten the worst Canto, and you're enjoying yourself already, you're gonna have a good time with the rest of the fucking game, because this is the worst one, and it's still pretty fucking good. It's still very enjoyable. There's still a lot going on, a lot of introductions to be made, a lot of themes and concepts to put forward to the player, to introduce them to, even to veteran Project Moon players. There's a lot there, a lot of information that needs to be conveyed. And I think the Canto does a good job of doing it. I can't remember if it was very long or very short. It seemed like the right length to me. I don't know, the dungeon I think was a bit long, but I think that's because I was trying to talk through every fight at that point, which made it drag on quite a bit, but nah, Canto 1 is very good. Getting to hang out with Gregor as much as we did was fantastic. Like I said before, being thrown back into his literal nightmare is heartbreaking, and then proceeding to lose his, like, sister surrogate character, basically, you know, I can't remember her name right now. Is it Yuri? Yuri. Losing Yuri was especially fucking rough as well. And the Canto goes to a point of mentioning that the guy is basically a biological weapon and is regarded as vermin, but he's still a very friendly person, he's still a very good-natured person, and has strong morals. So, frankly, 98%, actually, let's be fair, 88% of the reason why Canto 1 is good is because it focuses on Gregor. That's about all I've got for it. Next up is Canto 2. I'm going to say greater. Canto 2 should not be in greater, frankly. It actually shouldn't be. It should be lower. If I'm to be completely objectively honest, it should be lower. But I really enjoyed Canto 2. I really enjoyed Canto 2. I think Canto 2 was the most enjoyable Canto for me. It was the most fun. I had the most fun going through it. I personally, on a very basic level, enjoyed it the most. I had the best time with it. But, for a Canto based entirely on Rhodia, she doesn't really... Her story goes nowhere. She does nothing. She comes to no real realizations. She makes no discoveries about herself. She doesn't really own up to much. She doesn't reevaluate her position on whether killing that tax collector was a good idea or not. She doesn't really assess her opinions on, like, okay, you know, when I was working with those people who are trying to help out the lower class, do I want to keep doing that? Do I want to not keep doing that? Do I want to... Her character goes nowhere in Canto 2. It's a bit of a disappointment, considering... To be fair, Gregor doesn't really go anywhere in Canto 1, but... he does at least face it head on. Rhodia feels like the whole time she's trying to ignore it. Like, it's clearly obvious that everything around her is in regards to her own past, and she's just fucking, like, just doing that the whole time. Like... not want nothing to do with it, not interested in acknowledging it. And that is, I would argue, probably quite faithful to her character, but it is rather unsatisfying from a narrative perspective. On top of that, Canto 2's final boss is garbage. It is like the only thing in this game I'm actually going to refer to definitively as garbage. That boss sucks. It's a cool idea, right? Running from the castle. Great idea. It's just not cool or fun, though. Just very, very boring. Considering some of the boss fights we've had throughout the series, oof, it's pretty fucking bad. It's not good. But The tomfoolery, going through the nest, fighting gangsters, trying to find the Ting Tangs to nick their fucking luck or whatever, bumble fucking their way through the casino, all in. It was all a great time. It was all very fun. I enjoyed my time in Canto 2 very much. One of its major downsides, I'd say, is that it probably lacks in misery and trauma. Like, you only really see any of that right at the end when we're talking about Rhodia murdering that lady. But I think after Canto 1's absolute misery hell dive, it was extremely refreshing to have a bouncy, fun, off-the-rails adventure. And that's probably why I enjoyed Canto 2 as much as I did, because it immediately followed Canto 1. There wasn't even any minis or intervals in between Canto 1 and Canto 2. It was straight from Canto 1 to Canto 2, with a massive tone shift, and I think that might be why I enjoyed Canto 2 so much, because the contrast was very strong. But despite all that, I do think Canto 2 is genuinely good anyway, like even ignoring the contrast with Canto 1 and many of its failings. I think Canto 2 is a great time. I think Canto 1 gets your attention, Canto 2 seals you in. You're like, alright, I want to keep going with this. This is fucking fun and interesting, and I want to see where these characters go. That's my opinion at the very least. Canto 3, I'd say, is great. It's a great Canto. But Canto 3 feels like the standard that other Cantos should be measured against. In fact, I'd say it's probably the most standard Canto in the game, for better and worse. It incorporates all the elements that we're looking for, which is the comedy, the in-depth storytelling, the greater insight into a character's personality, and obviously the trauma and misery and war crimes. It has all of that wrapped up in one Canto, which would become kind of the standard for all future Cantos, or at least the next two. I don't know beyond that. But it feels like that's what it set up. It feels like Canto 3 set up what the rest of the game's Cantos were going to be like. But it's worth pointing out that if the standard for the game is great, that's quite a feather in your cap, isn't it? You know? If it's like, right, the bare minimum I expect now is great, because that is what you've established. Not bad. Well fucking done. I liked getting to know Sinclair better. I sympathized with him a lot more afterwards, because I always thought he was a bit of a drip leading up to that point. Like, I didn't dislike him, but he was a little bit, like, he was a little bit of a whiny kid. Not a really bad one, not a really annoying one. I didn't really find him annoying, to be honest, but he was a little bit of a whiny kid. But we got a lot more context on him. We got to see him be brave. We got to see him stand up and face his tormentor and face it head on. Assess, address, acknowledge his problems, his failings, the fact that he basically got his family killed. Although, let's be real, it wasn't really his fault because he couldn't have known, but he was in a good headspace back then, and his family paid the price, and he's learned from that. And I think following Canto 3, he hasn't perhaps fully internalized it all, but I think he's ready to move on. And I think Canto 3, as a result, was very satisfying for all of these reasons. The fucking war at the K-Corp checkpoint was nuts. Like, actually insane. Very cool that was a thing. Sword and Effie's death, I guess. Very sad, because they were a massive part of Canto 2. So that was a pretty big downer. Guido was terrifying because he just kept fucking coming back. Dude was fucking scary. And Chroma was deliciously evil. She was hilariously, fantastically, ridiculously evil, which made her very enjoyable to hate and very enjoyable to fight. The Canto also introduces a lot of like discrimination and xenophobia kind of references and parallels and vibes and stuff, in regards to people with prosthetics in that Canto, which provides a lot of interesting real world parallels that A, make you think, and B, give you some context with which to understand what's going on. Even Heathcliff and Merceau basically having the argument of like, are you a racist, or are you racist adjacent, or are you not a racist? What are you? And I should point out that the first two are basically the same thing. Like, they had a proper heated argument about it, which was very interesting. It was a very good Canto. I hope I'm not putting too much pressure on Project Moon by stating that is the standard I expect from now on, but it is kind of the standard I expect. I will point out that Sinclair's Schoolyard Adventures went on way too fucking long. I've not changed my mind on that. But I do understand that that level of detail is kind of necessary for PM storytelling, but also sometimes maybe we could just cut a little bit of it, maybe sometimes. But I also understand that really PM is trying to make these cantos as content-filled as they can, because they know it's going to take a while before they can put out another one. They know you guys are going to have to be very patient about it, and they're trying to give you as much as they can, and I understand that. And that leads me ever so succinctly on to Canto 4. And this is a pretty big one. Canto 4 is the best. It's the best. It's actually the best, in my opinion. In my opinion. In my opinion. It is the best. Despite the excessive combat, this is my favourite so far. I've always been interested in learning more about Yi Sang because he was always a very mysterious character and very much kept to himself. Didn't even talk much, to be honest, but he was always there. He was always interested me. Following up with K-Corp and Samjo was interesting because we'd already gotten some context with them, so we had a foundation from which to expand our knowledge, and less details needed to be established because they had already been established in Canto 3. Even though the focus was a bit more on N-Corp in Canto 3, it was still in K-Corp's district, so we passively learned more about K-Corp leading into Canto 4, which helped. And also, I loved hanging out with Samjo more. I love Samjo, he's fucking great. God rest his skeleton. Dong Rang was an amazing villain because A, you never knew where you stood with him. You never really knew what he was thinking. You thought you did, and then he would prove that you didn't. And for a lot of the Canto, I didn't even realize he was the villain. Like, they bait and switched the shit out of that a lot. Dong Rang is by your side for 90% of the Canto. You spend practically the entirety of Canto 4 hanging out with the final boss. The whole time, talking to him, getting to know his thoughts on things, seeing what he's like, seeing his reaction to certain things. So much time spent with Dong Rang to then finally pay it off in a 2-part final boss fight where he distorts and then manifests ego was pretty fucking astounding, right? Dong Rang, I think, is the best villain so far. I think he's the most interesting. I think he's the most enjoyable to have on screen. He had plenty of love-to-hate moments. You weren't really sure if he was the one who sold out the League until he outright states it, and it's like, oh god, right, yeah, okay, it was you. Okay, I'm not entirely surprised, but I didn't know for sure, and oh fuck. We cannot talk about Canto 4 without mentioning Sun Shower and Spice Bush, because my fucking god, was that hype. That was so hype. And it was also a scene that really allowed you to see what a sadistic little fucker Dong Rang is. But having Dong Baek go Spice Bush and then fight you was incredible. That fight isn't even the best in the game, frankly, but it is amazing, and it's set up so well, and it's presented so well. It's it is hard to say whether or not it's peak, but it's up there. It's definitely up there. It is very, very far up there. Actually, I just realized it wasn't peak, because you know what is peak? The fly broken wings moment, when Yi Sang kills Dong Rang, is the peak of Limbus, in my opinion, so far. That is the best moment in the game so far, from what I've seen. I think that is such a triumphant, beautiful, well-presented, hype, cathartic, satisfying moment. When he pulls the fucking blade back and the wings come out, and it's incredible. And like, you know, it always feels like the sinner has earned their victory in their Canto, as it were, but Yi Sang really feels like he's earned it. He really feels like he's gone through it. He's gotten through the fucking horrible fog in his mind and has come out the other side, and he's so much better off for it, and it's an amazing moment. However, the combat was excessive. There were way too many fights, miles too many. I didn't have such a bad experience with it because we were doing the Blade Lineage event during that time, which meant every single Canto fight I was doing, I was getting sheaths. So I actually benefited from the excessive amounts of fights. But looking at it objectively, there is no getting around the fact that there were way too fucking many fights in that Canto. Miles too many. The Canto is also off to a very slow start, which may sound weird because one of the first things you do is go after the bull, but it's pretty slow. The Sinners spend a long time talking about it before they fight the bull. Then they spend a long time talking about the bull. Then they spend a long time talking about going to see K-Corp. And then they see K-Corp. And they spend a lot of time talking about that. And then they spend a long time talking about chickens in a meat processing factory. And then they spend a long time talking about the technology at Liberation Alliance. And it is quite slow paced. It is borderline glacial, actually, how slow the early sections of Canto 4 are. It is so fucking slow. Oh god. The story also lingers on the Liberation Alliance for way too fucking long, and they are not that interesting. Them using Ego was pretty cool. I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty hype. We're going up against the fucking Talisman and the Sloshing and whatever, and then I found out later on that like the abnormalities you fight in the dungeon are basically the abnormalities where those egos came from, and that's really cool. But the Liberation Alliance was pretty fucking dull in the grand scheme of things. They're not N-Corp. N-Corp was a lot more interesting than the Technology Liberation Alliance. They were a bit dull. The Sheer Association red herring was just weird, just like, fucking, I can't even remember her name now, but that girl died. I'm pretty sure she was killed by Sheer Association. That's it. Okay, right, nothing more from that then? We're not going to run into the assassins again? That's just it? Just a mild reference to Sheer Association? Naturally it's intended as a red herring to throw you off of what's actually going on, but it does feel like a bit of a bait and switch to be like, here's this faction you know about. We're doing nothing with them. And it's like, cool, thanks, brilliant. A little bit annoying, not gonna lie. The story in general of Canto 4 just plays up relationships and intrigues between the characters and then kills them kind of quickly. Like, you know, K-Corp girly and Liberation Alliance girly. It's played up like this is going to be a massive driving force between what's going on with the Liberation Alliance and the conflict of K-Corp. And then they both die within like 5 minutes of each other fairly early on. And you're like, all right, kind of thought that was going to be a thing, but I mean, it was a thing, but it didn't last very long, really. It was kind of just gone. Rose Spanner and was it Nico who leads them? Entirely unnecessary. They didn't even need to be there. There's like almost no reason for them to be there. That was practically time and money wasted. Now, don't get me wrong, the Rose Spanner shit is cool, but for the purposes of the story of Canto 4, practically meaningless. It was just weird. There were a lot of strange decisions like that where it's like, we're gonna do something, really? No. Oh. Why did you even bring it up then? Why did you bring up this fixer office of chainsaw-wielding fuckers just to have them immediately fuck off? There are reasons for it. There are reasons for all this build-up, all these red herrings, all these bait and switches and, abrupt lack of payoffs and such. But it did feel weird a lot of the time where it's like, I feel like we're just kind of going around in circles. It feels like we're not getting anywhere. It exacerbates the feeling of things going slowly because we're just not making progress. Nothing's happening. Stuff's just happening and we're not really doing anything. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know. Despite her cool moments, Dongbaek is not particularly interesting. At all. She's a bit dull. Amongst a plethora of interesting characters, she stands out by being the least notable, which is not a good position to be in. The most notable thing she did was manifest Ego twice. Well, I guess no. First time she was wearing Ego, second time she manifested Ego. But my point is, that was the most notable thing she did. The rest of what she did was pretty uninteresting and inconsequential. Didn't really matter. However, I'd say these shortcomings kind of serve to contrast with the Canto's strengths and make them stronger. Like, yeah, it has a slow start, but when it gets going, right? You suffer through talking about the stupid fucking drones in K-Corp streets, because then later you find the fucking eye watching all that footage. You suffer through all the crap with the Technology Liberation Alliance so you can have your big moment with Dongbaek and Sunshower and Spice Bush. You suffer through the talking about chickens in the fucking meat processing plant and all the crap around K-Corp that we shouldn't really care about, so that when Samjo dies, it's fucking tragic, and when we fight Dongrang later on, that's a big fucking deal, because we've hung out with him the whole time. When we see the League fall apart, and then Dongrang at least being partially responsible for it, that's a big fucking deal, because we've been provided with the context. Doesn't mean all those decisions were necessarily a good idea, but the Canto is strange and it is ideal, and that's why it's my favorite. I think it is the best one. Now, the question is, where does Canto 5 go? Obviously, it doesn't go best. There is only one best. But I'm not going to hold you guys in suspense much longer, to be honest. It's greater. I clicked off screen. Oh, no, not great. Greater. It is greater. In my opinion, Canto 5 is actually the second best Canto in the game. And if someone was like, actually, Foreman, I think Canto 5 is the best, I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. Actually, yeah. No, I can see it. I can absolutely see it. But the lake was hyped as a place of extreme danger, and indeed, the whole time that we're there, it did feel like we are in so much danger. Like, it feels like everyone could die at any moment. Now, obviously, meta-narrative speaking here, but it's highly unlikely that we're going to lose anyone, because the story isn't really made that way. But it still had tension. It still felt like there was risk. It still felt like everything could fall apart at any given moment. Ishmael's compulsive behavior and bad attitude contributed to that feeling as well, where it felt like any moment she would actually fucking snap. Not just go out and do something a little bit compulsive, but fucking snap. Absolutely lose it. And what that would entail, not sure. She already almost killed Heathcliff in the Intervallo. Now, yeah, death doesn't matter because people can be brought back, but it could still have a drastic effect on the operation to get the Golden Bough. And the whole time, right up until the fight with Ahab and her crew, it feels like she's going to fuck with the operation to get the bow. It feels like she will cause us to not get the bow. It feels like she will cause the mission to fail, because we do have a pre-established, like, history of sometimes not getting the Golden Bough. I think it was only in Canto 1, but we have failed to get the Golden Bough before. It does happen. Did we get the one in 2? I think we did, yeah. At the very least, I know we didn't get it in 1. So that is a genuine risk that we'll fail to get the Golden Bough, and that would be a huge blow. And it genuinely felt like anything could happen at any moment that would basically mean that we can't get it, that we failed in our mission, and that added tension. The whole Canto was tense. Very tense. More tense than any other scene, event, location, place, Canto in the game. This was the most tense by a wide margin. I could feel the whole time that a lot of the sinners were treading on eggshells whenever Ishmael was talking. Some of them would be a little braver, like, Otis would typically, like, directly confront her verbally and be like, well, I think this, well, that's not acceptable, well, you can't be like that, they're your manager, etc., etc. But it felt like most of the other sinners, especially since they didn't have a lot of lines when Ishmael was talking, it felt like they were treading around eggshells. It felt like they were just doing their best to not invoke her wrath, because she was that fucking angry. Wrath, it's a game about sins and sinners. It makes sense, doesn't it? Tons, maybe not tons, but many big character development moments for Dante, which were very satisfying. We went over those in Dante's assessment on the tier list, but that was great. Very happy about that. Love to see Dante getting in there and doing some solid managering and ruining their shoulder. Poor Dante. Mermaids were set up and paid off very well. That scene where the boat, I can't even remember why we fucking changed the layout of the boat for the fight, but it was very cool when that happened. Like, it all went shung, 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 and then they got on the fucking boat, and there was a huge whale hand on there, and very cool. And it set up the mermaids to be fucking terrifying, and then when you learn that they basically overwrite people and turn them into mermaids, they became more terrifying, because it is a fate that the sinners could suffer that Dante would not be able to fix. Dante can help prevent it, I guess in the case of polification specifically, but if you get turned into a mermaid, you're fucking gone, dude. It doesn't matter how many times we turn the clock, you're out. That's scary. That's tense. That is very tense. Ishmael's relationship with Queequeg, I think, was actually handled masterfully. It was foreshadowed, of course, in the club on Marlin Bay, and then never really brought up again. So then when it happens in the depths of the whale, you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, God, it's Queequeg. Oh, shit. Oh, wow, really? And from there on, it's just played masterfully. Every single time they talk to each other or have or you're seeing Ishmael's memories of Queequeg, she's been through a lot. Queequeg is a fantastic character, by the way. I love Queequeg. I love her very much. Her relationship with Ishmael is fantastic. You truly get the impression that she is practically all that Ishmael was living for by this point. And it's paid off extremely effectively, especially in the final encounter. Ricardo, I realized we kind of went past him. Ricardo was hilarious and terrifying in equal measure. That dude was amazing. That's such a fun moment and terrifying moment, because you're like, I genuinely don't see how the sinners are going to get out of this. They're kind of fucked, actually. Genuinely, like, tense, but also really funny, because the dude's just obsessed with his hair, but also serves as a great example to be like, this gang will literally murder you over hair coupons, which is fucked. It shows just how little life is valued. It shows just how kind of psychotic the middle are, and then that's paid off later when revisiting Queequeg's memories, where she's like, Ishmael's memories about Queequeg, where she's like, I had to run from the middle and I had to scrape the tattoos off my skin and remove their words from my head, way of talking, as it were, and just, you believe it. You believe they would ask her to do that, or, you know, ask, quote unquote. Yeah, did a good job of conveying just how terrifying the middle are. Ricardo had a significant amount of gravitas and dread about him, and that was very well played, and I liked it. Very good. Decent fight as well. Quite tough if I wasn't using a blunt team. Luckily I was. Ahab is really funny because she starts off seeming reasonable and then very, very, very suddenly becomes hilariously evil. Like, ridiculously, hilariously over the top evil. Just fucking doing this with her fingers and ordering an orphanage to be burned down and shit like that. But it's worth pointing out that her ability to manipulate, coerce, and dredge up the feelings inside of most of the people she talks to allowed her to remain a genuinely credible and realistic threat. There are people like her in the real world, perhaps not that crazy, but people who will manipulate you to get what they want. It's very real. And that kept her feeling very real and very threatening, I guess, as a generally existing person. You can tell I thought she was threatening because I was like, Ishmael, kill her. Just kill her now. Do it quick. She has to go. The last two boss fights were incredible. Frankly, I loved both of them. Compass is the best track in Limbus, in my opinion. I think it's actually the best song. I've been listening to it a lot. I think it's incredible. I think it is a superb song. So fucking good and used incredibly well. Slaying the whale was immensely satisfying, as we all know. Having Ishmael deliver that final blow was fantastic. And Ahab's defeat and subsequent breakdown only makes it better. Canto 5 was fantastic. However, obviously I recognize the fact that the whole point of Ishmael's behavior at the start of the Canto, and previous Intervallo, of course, was to be erratic, aggressive, and generally hard to the point of really actually being impossible to work with. She's supposed to be difficult. She's supposed to be, like, just not unable to be reasoned with. She's manic. She's, like, way off the deep end. She's fucking out there, as it were. But I feel they went a teeny bit too far with it, to the point where it just becomes quite frustrating to watch. Where after a while, it's like, just stop, please, just for a moment. Just, like, you'll be having a scene, and then she starts fucking being like, and you're like, shut up. Just shut up for a minute. Just shut the fuck up for a minute and let the scene play. Stop, please. I understand it, I do, but I feel like they could have either toned her back slightly to be less, although of course her being disruptive was the point, but maybe just a bit less disruptive. Or, perhaps this might have been better, introduce more of the points that make her behavior more sympathetic earlier on, so that the start isn't quite so frustrating. Because while I do not condone the fact that I ragged on her as hard as I did at the start of Canto 5, I don't really blame myself for it, because look what I was working with. It's a bit much. It's a bit too much. They did it too well, I guess it would be the complaint I'd make there. Maybe dial it back, like, there's no point, they're not going to edit it now, but my constructive criticism, I suppose, would be dial it back a bit, or introduce something to make her a little more sympathetic first. Like, they handled Ahab incredibly well. To begin with, you're talking to her and you're like, this lady seems alright, like maybe a bit selfish, sure, if you completely ignore any knowledge of the book, of course. She seems a bit self-centered and, like, you know, tunnel vision. She's got too much tunnel vision, but she doesn't seem that bad, and she seems to care about her crew. And then the game comes in with, like, no, this lady's fucking nuts. And you're like, oh, okay, right, cool. But we had the bait and switch. This it's just, with the combination of the intervallo as well, it feels like we spent too long watching Ishmael just ruin everything for a while, and it's like, I don't want to dislike the character, but you're making me dislike the character. Could we tone it back slightly and make her a little more sympathetic in some cases? You don't have to, like, spill her entire fucking beans immediately, but just give us a little something to be like, okay, look, she's going through a lot. I know they did try to an extent, but I just don't feel like they did enough, frankly. It just came across as, and people are going to hate me for this, but it's true, it came across as sulky, sullen teenager having a tantrum, rather than grown woman with extremely traumatic past is struggling to deal with the fact that she's going to have to go back to where that all happened and face a place that is possibly the most dangerous place you can go, which is the actual reality of the situation. But in those early stages, it came across as sulky, sullen teenager on a tantrum. That's what her behavior, all her behavior made me think. And I couldn't discard that thought. I tried, but I couldn't. And I think it could be fixed if they just tweaked her a little bit. But it's not going to happen now, and I'm not proposing that it does. I think the Canto should be left as is. But that's my biggest complaint about Canto 5, is that they could have... The early sections of Canto 5 are, in my opinion, legitimately damaged by Ishmael's behavior, because they just laid it on a bit too thick. I don't know. I'm sure many people will not agree with me on that one, but that is what I think. I will acknowledge, for the sake of fairness, right, I still believe what I said to be true, but I will acknowledge for the sake of fairness that considering she wasn't my favorite sinner at that point anyway, that might have led to me getting more easily frustrated with her, right? If, like, it feels terrible to say, but if, like, Heathcliff had done that, I might have been more inclined to forgive him. Or if Otis had done it, or if Rodiel or Don Quixote, if any of them had done it, I might have been more forgiving. But maybe the fact that it was Ishmael and she'd already been kind of annoying me up to that point caused me to be a little less patient. I'm willing to acknowledge that might be the case, but this does not change the fact that I think they laid it on too thick. They made her a little too unbearable in those early stages. At least that's what I think. The time on the LobCorp facility dragged a bit, in my opinion. Like, which is weird, because that was kind of supposed to be where the Golden Bough is, and, like, we had to discover that it's not there in order to leave, but, like, you know, the politification conversation was interesting, but did drag on a bit, admittedly. Rim is horrifically boring. Rim is catastrophically boring, which shouldn't be the way I describe someone with a fishbowl head, but it is. Rim is just dull. I find that entire faction that he and Demian are a part of, see, I remember the name, I find all of that to be dull, extremely dull. I'm not particularly interested in these weird, enigmatic, magical watchers. I'm just not. I'm just not interested in them, and Rim in particular. Demian is already pretty fucking dull. Rim was really dull. Even his connection to the League and Yi Sang was not enough to make him interesting to me. I found him horrifically boring, and that scene, even though it wasn't that long, dragged on as far as I was concerned. The cruise ship, like the ghost ship, was mildly funny and mildly interesting, but didn't feel like it needed to be there. Just felt like it kind of... felt like padding, I guess, is the way I describe that. There was no real reason for the sinners to go on the boat, other than we need to pad the length, I guess. Doesn't really matter that much, but it is notable. I do remember thinking, like, why the fuck are we even doing this? Heathcliff punching the stereo was pretty funny. That's about it, really. Not much going on that boat. Not much memorable. Pilot exists, I guess. And yeah, perhaps they've set him up to be a reoccurring character in future Cantos, but for this one, we spent a long time talking to him for not much reason, not much payoff, really. I guess having Rodia tell Ishmael to not tell him that Santa Claus is real, I'm joking, of course, not tell him that he's being brainwashed. Having that conversation between Ishmael and Rodia was pretty good. I appreciate being able to have that moment happen. But it was a long conversation with Pilot, and we'd already, in my opinion, spent too long on Marlin Port, or Marlin Bay, whatever the fuck it's called. We'd already spent too long there. I feel like, and I'm only speaking for myself here, of course, but I feel like by that point we're kind of like, okay, yeah, but I kind of want to get moving, right? Feels like we've been dawdling on this place for too long. Let's go. but it's another long conversation to add to that. It's not bad, it's not that bad, but Pilot felt kind of unnecessary. But then again, if they pay him off in later cantos, then it's kind of worth it, isn't it, to be honest? It's just a lot of character development to then immediately drop him for the rest of the canto. I don't know. Finally, and this is not going to be well received, but it's something I think worth talking about, and that's the slaying of the whale. The music swelling as the harpoon strikes the whale is very cool. It's a very great moment. It's very cathartic. It's very satisfying. It's very fun. It's very like, all of it's been leading up to this moment. Yeah, and we're doing it. The problem is that we've already done this in Canto 4. We already did this before with Fly Broken Wings, and I think Fly Broken Wings is better. And I kind of saw this happening. I kind of saw it coming from the moment a Millie song came in during the final boss fight. I was like, okay, so we're going to have the music swell and go into the key moment as a final blow is delivered. I already knew. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? I still enjoyed it. Knowing it's coming doesn't make it not fun or satisfying or cathartic, but I can't really sit... That was probably the best moment in Canto 5, but I can't sit here and be like, that's the best moment in all of fucking Limbus, and that's why Canto 5 should be the best one, where it's already been done, and kind of done better. I genuinely feel that, even though Fly Broken Wings is not as good a song as Compass, I still feel like that moment was better. I've never felt so hyped as that Fly Broken Wings moment. To see Yi Sang succeed in that manner. I don't want to downplay the success of Ishmael at the end of that canto, because everything she does there is fucking flawless, and I love all of it. I love the ending sequence of Canto 5. I love everything she does there. It's fucking brilliant. She does it perfectly. I couldn't be more impressed. I couldn't be filled with more respect for her by the end of Canto 5 than I was. But it is a slight dampener to know that we already did that scene a canto ago in exactly the same place. You know, like in terms of the placement in the story. Maybe if it hadn't been done before in Canto 4, I'd be praising the whale kill as the hypest thing in Limbus. Maybe the hypest thing in all of Project Moon. Possibly, who knows. But it did already happen. It's already been done. But having said that, if they do it again in Canto 6, I'm not exactly going to be disappointed. You know? The fact that it's been done before and done here is not exactly a bad thing, because it was really cool. It's just a mild dampener on that scene. But, to summarize, it's still an incredible moment. This was an incredible canto, and I feel it absolutely deserves second place. And if you think it should be in first place, like I said at the start of this, shit, you're right, dude, it does. It absolutely deserves first place. Absolutely. It's only personal opinion that has made me put Canto 4 above it. I wouldn't sit here and try and tell you that Canto 4 is objectively better, because I just think that would be a very difficult conversation to win. That would be a very difficult argument to win, and I don't think I could do it. Not without just saying, yeah, but I prefer Canto 4. And that's it. I acknowledge the lack of logic in that decision. I do. I really do. 100%. But it is my favorite. But that was the Canto tier list, ladies and gentlemen. Thought I'd throw that in as a little extra. I guess once Canto 6 is done, we'll be throwing it on here as well, but that will be considerably shorter than this one because we aren't going through every single canto each time, because we're probably not going to move the cantos around. Unlike the Sinners, whose personalities and behaviors and expressions and actions are changing all the time, these are set in stone. These are events, not people, so we're not going to be moving them around. It will be much shorter in the future. But I hope you enjoyed the Canto tier list. I thought it was a cool idea, and I thought it'd be good to really get some stuff squared away, you know, really clear the air on certain matters. But, yeah, let me know what you think on that. I'm sure I'm going to get some very passionate responses to some of the things I've said and decisions I've made. We are not going to do the hard mirror dungeon today, ladies and gentlemen, because it's been an hour and a half, and I've also talked myself hoarse. Like, my throat is going because I've been passionately ranting and raving and shouting about the Sinners and about the Cantos, that I think I would lose my voice if I then tried to do an entire mirror dungeon on top of this. But we are going to do an extraction first. We are, because I want Painty Yi Sang, Ring Sang, whatever he's called. I do want to try and get that. So let's see if we can make it happen. Or we might just get something else. Oh, it's a good start though. Okay, but we gotta do things the way we normally do. But yeah, in reference to what I just said about all the Cantos and Sinners and stuff, I really hope that Ishmael starts to like really start to bond with the rest of the Sinners and have some good moments, and I can appreciate seeing her on screen and enjoy her moments with the other Sinners, and we can get some really good, funny, or emotional or enjoyable moments out of her, you know? That's what I really want. I don't want to dislike her at all. I don't want to dislike any of these characters. I want to like them all, and I hope I do. Oh yeah! The wings! The wings! My boy! He's even tied his hair back. Yi Sang's copying me. Yi Sang's copying me. Ah, buddy, imitation is the best form of flattery. Thank you, sir. Do appreciate it. Looks good on you, man. Your fringe is better than mine, I'll be honest. Nice hat as well. That's very cool. Very pleased with that. Oh, what a boy. Apparently, Ring Sang is fucking broken as shit, so quite excited. Paint over, heads hit, inflict 2+ count for one of the so he just inflicts count? Ooh, and inflict bleed, and obviously this would be better at higher up ties. 20% chance to reuse coin once, plus 20% more chance to reuse coin for every type of negative effect on the target. Yeah, so you can just hit the fuck out of them, I suppose. Inflict bleed count, inflict 2 count for one of the following effects, so just more count. Schematic coloring. If the target has 6+ bleed, clash power +1. Inflict 1 bleed count. If the target has 4 types of negative effects, inflict 2 additional bleed count. Inflict 3 count for one of the following effects. Effects selected at random. Inflict bleed. 4 types of negative effects. Inflicts additional bleed. Extra potency for one of the effects. Deal 15% more damage for every type of negative effects on target, max 75%. After attack, if the target is staggered or defeated, inflict 2 potency for one type of the following effects on one enemy with the least type of negative effects. So he's really good at just applying the effects that he needs in order to do additional attacks and damage, which is insane. If target has 6+ bleed, a lot more base power. That's very good. The identity only counts as an identity that inflicts bleed. This identity skills that randomly inflicts burn, bleed, tremor, rupture, and sinking do not count as skills that inflict each respective keyword. Yes, to make sure he isn't fucking broken in the mirror dungeon, I imagine. Makes sense. And probably some support passives as well. On hit, if the target has 6+ bleed, heal 2 SP. He's probably still going to be quite strong, though, with bleed gifts, so it's not all bad. Heal 1 additional SP for every type of negative effect on the target, max 3. If this unit's SP is at max, gain 1 offense level up next turn when this unit heals SP with this effect. That's really fucking good. 1 ally with the least SP heals 2 SP on hit for every type of negative effect on the target, max 6. This passive activates 2 times max per turn. Very fucking good. Oh, my throat is really going. I've been shouting way too much. Yeah, that's really cool. We're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen, because I've actually burned my throat out doing this, and I should probably stop. But I wanted to tell you guys real quick that naturally for Canto 6, we're going to be running the sinking, wuthering, and sun shower team, so that's going to be pretty fun. But I also want to set up a new rupture team. Right, I already had a rupture team, but I want to get 7 Faust in there, and I want to get K-Corp Hong Lur in there and see what we can do with that. I really wanted to see if I could get it together in time for the Refraction Railway, but I just don't think I have the resources to do that and set up the team for Canto 6. So probably going to have to put this on hiatus for now, which is sad. And we'll probably end up going through the Refraction Railway with the Lure team because they're all pretty much at the right level anyway. We need to spend all of our resources really on getting this team ready because none of these are uptied and all of them are level 1. So that needs to be the focus.
기름진 식사 후에는 꼭 차를 곁들여야 한답니다.
But I'll take care of that. You don't need to worry about that. That's all up to me, and I'll take care of it. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Special thanks to Painted Dragoon, Lyre the Hagsire, Lit Potatoes, Proxy, Caminera, Heartland, Herrick J, Dresso, Sion Distance, Lol, Final Legend, Etherbin, Linky, Zeon Cedar, Bimblewort, Majoko, Maimoon, Alkia, Sweet Baby Red, Jessicissy, Plutonium Pie, Dreamer Ghost, Lepol by K-Bub, Magical, The Frostbite, Monsoon, Warmaster Oku, SCP-106A, Namad, and Kenny T800 for support me on Patreon. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you all so much for watching, or listening, I suppose, because we didn't really do any gameplay today. It was all just tier lists. It was all just talking, and I apologize if that's not what you're here for, but I think there was a lot to discuss. Definitely about Ishmael, and definitely about Canto 5, but also about the Cantos in general. I feel like there was a lot of air that needed to be cleared. Not necessarily to get you guys to agree with me. I don't need you to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, that's absolutely fine, and I'm not trying to persuade you to like or dislike certain characters. To put it bluntly, I don't give a fuck which characters you like and don't like. It doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. All I'm doing is expressing my opinions because, well, it seems to be what people do on videos, I guess. So that's what I'm doing. It would be a bit boring if I sat here and mentioned nothing of my own thoughts about anything. It's the only reason I provide them. If you don't like them, I do apologize. It's not done to irritate you. It's just me expressing my genuine opinions. I'm not interested in lying for the sake of mass appeal, but I don't say shit to antagonize you guys either. Unfortunately, I usually end up doing both. So once again, I do apologize, but it's just me expressing my opinions. If you disagree, that is totally fine. Feel free to contest my opinions in the comments. As long as you are civil, there's no need to be, oh god, my throat's fucking going. There's no need to be shitty about it. I'm not saying people are, I'm just saying please don't, because there's no real need for it, but I can only ask. I can't really tell you what to do. But yeah, please feel free to contest the opinions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, or listening more to the point. Whatever happens next time, and I imagine it'll be Harder Mirror Dungeon next time, and then after that, I think the railway will be fixed, and we can give that a try, which will probably be a couple videos, and then we'll be on to the minis and Intervallo, or Intervallos. I think there's like 2 or something. I don't know, but that's exciting, and I hope I see you there. Doodles, goodbye.